He looked so proud standing beside me, one hand on my belly and the other raised in a toast, like he was the model husband and soon-to-be father. The baby shower was just beginning. The cake hadn't even been cut yet, and the backyard was filled with pastel balloons, clinking glasses, and smiles that felt like glass, delicate, hollow, and sharp. Then it happened. I stood up, tapped my glass with a spoon and said, "Before we play the baby name game, I want to thank a few very special women who made this day unforgettable." People clapped. My husband, Greg, smiled, still unaware. I took a deep breath. "Like my sweet employee, Missy. Missy, could you come up here, please?" She looked startled but smiled awkwardly and came forward. "And also, Rachel. Rachel, you can come too. Oh, and Amanda. Yes, you too, sweetheart." The crowd was confused. My husband froze. My mother-in-law clutched her pearls like she was bracing for an earthquake. "These women," I continued, "share something very special in common. They've all shared something, or should I say someone?" A hush fell over the backyard like a thick fog. Greg's face drained of colour. I looked straight at him. "They're all your mistresses, Greg. Every single one of them. One of them even works for me." That's when the glass in Greg's hand dropped. The crowd gasped. My mother-in-law swayed. Then her knees buckled. She fainted. And that's when the screaming started. But let me rewind. Because you need to know how I got here in the first place. My name is Patricia Montgomery. I'm 84 years old, blonde-haired with curls I still try to set every Sunday, and I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina all my life. I'm a retired literature professor, and I never imagined I'd be planning a baby shower in my 80s, much less mine. But life doesn't exactly follow lesson plans, does it? Greg is 59. Yes, I know. The age gap is considerable. But he was charming, attentive, and made me feel like I was still a woman, not just someone collecting social security checks and knitting cardigans. When he told me he wanted to start a family, even if it meant a surrogate, I was stunned, but flattered. He said he wanted a child that would carry both our names, both our spirits. Until you can't anymore. The day everything began to fall apart was the day I walked into my office and saw Missy, my 28-year-old assistant, wiping tears from her eyes at her desk. "Are you all right, honey?" I asked. She jumped. "Yes, sorry, allergies." But her screen hadn't gone to sleep yet, and on it I saw his name, Gregory M. A message box wide open. "Don't wear that thing again. You looked too damn sexy and I couldn't keep my hands off you." I stared. My fingers went cold. My throat dried. Missy noticed my eyes and spun the screen away in panic. "Is that my husband?" I asked. She didn't respond, and I didn't need her to. That night I didn't cry. I boiled water for tea. I stared at the walls of our home, the same walls Greg had painted for me, the same house he said we'd grow old in. And then I opened a folder on my laptop titled Pat's Memories, where I kept letters, scanned photos, my will, and added a new file. Operation. Baby shower surprise. I spent the next 4 weeks gathering evidence like a quiet investigator. I looked through phone records. I checked card transactions. I even found an old burner phone Greg had hidden in the toolbox in the garage. I recognized the sound it made when I accidentally bumped the shelf. That phone had messages from not one, not two, but 3 women. One of them was Missy. Another was Rachel, a woman I'd met once during Greg's business conference in Tampa. She'd smiled at me so warmly back then. The third was Amanda, a barista from his gym. He had type all right, young, bubbly, easy to lie to. But I wasn't going to scream or beg or fight. I was going to plan the most unforgettable baby shower in Charleston, and everyone was going to remember what happens when you play games with an old woman's heart. When I sent the invites, I made sure Greg saw every detail. He smiled like a proud father-to-be. He had no idea the women he'd juggled were about to become centerpieces at his own crucifixion. Missy RSVP'd. Yes, of course. She had no choice. She still worked for me. Rachel seemed surprised but accepted graciously. Amanda was harder to convince, but once I offered to pay for her Uber, she said she'd drop by. I even ordered matching cupcakes, each one decorated with the name of the mistresses, hidden inside a gold foil wrapper, because sugar-coated betrayal is still betrayal. The morning of the shower, I dressed in my softest pink gown and added pearls around my neck, a gift from Greg on our second anniversary. He kissed my cheek as I adjusted my lipstick. "You look beautiful, babe," he said. I smiled. "Thank you. Today's going to be unforgettable." He chuckled. "Yeah, I bet it will be." "Oh, it will be, Greg. It will be." And so, back to that moment in the backyard. As my mother-in-law lay unconscious and people ran for water and towels, I stood firm. The three women stood frozen. Greg finally spoke. "Patricia, I can explain." I turned to him, dead in the eyes. "Don't. Not here. Not now." Because what he didn't know was that I had a second surprise waiting inside the house. And once he stepped through that front door, he'd never look at me the same again. People always assume that when a woman reaches her 80s, she's supposed to be quiet, sweet, and a little forgetful. What they don't expect is strategy. After my mother-in-law was gently revived on a lawn chair with a damp cloth on her forehead, still too stunned to form sentences, I smiled at the murmuring crowd, lifted my arms and said, "Now, if y'all would follow me inside for a very special surprise, I promise this day will be educational." Greg was sweating. Missy was trembling. Rachel and Amanda exchanged awkward looks, probably realizing this wasn't going to end with party games and gift bags. I turned and walked slowly toward the French doors, my hand resting on the small of my back for dramatic effect. The southern sun bounced off the silver in my curls, and I could feel their eyes following me like children tiptoeing behind their schoolteacher. The room they were about to walk into was no longer just a living room. It was an exhibit, and I was the curator of truth. Now let me tell you how I built it. After I discovered Missy's texts and Greg's burner phone, I called up my niece Grace, a bright, no-nonsense digital designer in her 40s who once told me, "Aunt Pat, if you ever need to catch someone cheating, I'm your girl." I laughed at the time, but I wasn't laughing when I called her a week later and said, "I need a favor, Grace. It's time to turn my heartbreak into a PowerPoint." And oh, did she deliver. We took screenshots of every message, every hotel receipt, every voicemail. Grace even used her editing skills to piece together a 6-minute slideshow, complete with dates, photos, and locations. I called it "The Other Women, a Timeline of Greg's Infidelity." I bought a projector on Amazon and mounted it above the mantel while Greg was away on business. Grace synced everything to my iPad and taught me how to click the remote like a TED Talk speaker. It was my baby shower, after all. Might as well deliver something. Back to the present. I opened the doors to the living room and stood by the fireplace. The guests walked in, puzzled, as the room dimmed. The curtains were drawn. The projector buzzed to life. On the screen, a title in bold white letters appeared against a soft baby pink background. "What My Husband Did While I Was Picking Nursery Paint." Greg gasped. Missy took a step back. Rachel whispered something that sounded a lot like, "Oh God." Amanda pulled out her phone, probably to text him, unaware the other women were doing the same. I cleared my throat and clicked. The first slide appeared, a message from Greg to Missy that read, "I love waking up to your voice more than anything. You're my morning sunshine." Dated April 4th, the same day he took me to the hospital for my blood pressure scare. The next slide, a selfie of Greg shirtless, taken in a hotel mirror, sent to Rachel. "Wish you were here again tonight." Slide 3, a brunch receipt for 2 from Amanda's cafe, with his signature and a little note, "You make me forget my responsibilities." The room was dead silent. Only the soft clicking of the slideshow filled the space like slow thunder. Then I spoke. "I may be old," I began, my voice steady, "but I'm not blind. I've spent decades reading people, students, colleagues, lovers. I've learned that when a man suddenly wants to give you a baby in your 80s, he's not honouring you. He's hiding something." I turned to Greg. 3 somethings, apparently. The colour in his face was somewhere between ash and tomato. His jaw trembled. "Patricia, please, can we just talk in private?" I smiled calmly. "Oh, sweetheart, you had private for 2 years. This is the public part." Laughter from one of the guests cracked through the silence like lightning. Someone clapped. Missy stepped forward. "I didn't know he was married when we met," she said, voice shaking. "He said he was divorced." Rachel added, "He told me his wife passed away." Amanda chimed in, "He told me he was single but trying for a baby with a surrogate." The crowd gasped again. Someone whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Greg tried to step toward me, but I raised my hand. One more step and the next slide plays the audio files." He stopped, because the next file wasn't just another sext or flirty voicemail. It was a recording of him, drunk, talking to Amanda on the phone, saying, "She's old. She's just a placeholder until I get the house and settle some paperwork. Once the baby's here, I'll figure something out." That one stung. Even after all I had seen, I had to practice not crying every time I heard it. Grace offered to cut it from the presentation, but I refused. Sometimes the truth isn't just bitter. Sometimes it's necessary. I stepped away from the screen and faced the crowd again. "In case you're wondering, no, I'm not carrying this baby. I'm too old for that. But the surrogate is real. She's due in 6 weeks, and I'll be raising that child, alone." Gasps. Greg blinked. "Wait. What?" "Oh, yes," I nodded. "Because the adoption papers? They're in my name only now. I removed yours the moment I found out. I figured, why give you something else to abandon?" His voice cracked. "You can't do that." I raised my brow. "Can't I?" And that's when he made a mistake. He lunged toward the projector to unplug it, but he tripped over a baby balloon string and knocked over the gift table, sending onesies, baby bottles, and a diaper cake flying. The guests screamed. One of the cupcakes hit the screen and slid down slowly, a gold wrapper labelled Missy, now smeared across Greg's face. Rachel backed away. Amanda looked like she was about to vomit, and Missy was crying. And me? I stood there, hand on my hip, 1 foot forward, like a woman who had just taken her entire life back. But the night wasn't over yet, not even close. Because what Greg didn't know was that the police had been invited too. Greg didn't even notice the flashing blue lights at first. He was too busy wiping frosting off his cheek, standing in the middle of crumpled wrapping paper and shattered pride. His mother, still dizzy from her fainting episode, was now sitting on the sofa, fanning herself with one of the party menus and muttering prayers under her breath. The doorbell rang twice, firm, commanding, the kind of knock you don't ignore. I looked at Greg, his hands shaking as he muttered, "Pat, please tell me that's not—" "It is," I said. Calm, controlled. The kind of calm that terrifies a guilty man more than screaming ever could. "It's exactly who you think it is." I turned to Missy and the other 2 women. "I suggest you ladies sit. I believe some of what's about to happen concerns you too." Then I walked to the door. Now, let me explain how the police came into this. 3 days after I finished compiling my evidence, I went down to the courthouse. I had Grace print everything on colour-coded tabs in a leather binder. Turns out, using company funds to fly a mistress to Miami, staying at the Viceroy and charging it as a consulting retreat, is corporate fraud, especially when I own 70% of the company. Yes, the same company Greg once said was too complicated for my age. I handed over bank records, emails and surveillance footage to my lawyer, Nora, a sharp 62-year-old firecracker who I met through a charity bridge club. She took one look at the binder and said, "We're pressing charges. I had her issue a cease and desist for my employee, Missy, and a formal civil complaint against Greg for financial misrepresentation, fraud, and emotional distress. But that wasn't all. Greg had borrowed $40,000 from one of our company accounts without my knowledge, supposedly to renovate a new wing of our home for the baby. I discovered that $40K had gone toward gifts, jewellery for Rachel, a new car deposit for Amanda, and rent for Missy's apartment. He was playing house with 3 different women on my dime. So I filed a report with the local authorities and asked if 2 officers wouldn't mind swinging by the party. You know, for dramatic effect. I opened the door. There stood Officer Chambers, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face like granite, and Officer Denning, younger, but just as serious. "Mrs. Montgomery?" Chambers asked. "That's me," I smiled politely. "Thank you for coming. You're right on time." Chambers stepped in. "We received your report regarding a financial discrepancy and suspected fraud. You mentioned the subject would be present today?" I turned slightly and gestured to Greg, who looked like a deer caught between headlights and a brick wall. "There he is," I said sweetly. "The man of the hour." You should have seen the room. Half the guests stood frozen. The other half slowly pulled out their phones. My granddaughter Lacey whispered to her friend, "I swear if this goes on TikTok, I'm posting it first." Greg stammered, This is some kind of mistake. Patricia, tell them this is just a big misunderstanding." "Oh, it's big," I nodded, "but not a misunderstanding." Officer Chambers stepped forward. "Sir, we'd like you to come with us for questioning. You're not under arrest at this time, but we do have some documents that require your immediate cooperation." Greg laughed nervously. "You can't be serious, you're pulling this stunt in front of everyone, my baby shower." I tilted my head. "Correction, my baby shower." Then I took the manila envelope from Officer Denning's hand and walked right up to Missy. "This is for you, dear," I said. "Your official notice. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately, pending civil litigation." She looked like she might pass out next. Rachel, smart woman that she was, grabbed her purse and said, "Yeah, I think I've had enough surprises for one day." Amanda followed. But Missy, poor shaking Missy, sank into the couch, hands over her mouth, mascara running in slow streams. Greg was escorted outside, but not before turning back and yelling, "You'll regret this, Patricia. You're throwing away everything. I loved you." I nodded slowly. "I believe you. Loved what I gave you. Not me." And then I closed the door behind him. The silence after he left was almost peaceful. I turned around, surveyed the room, the toppled gifts, the deflated balloons, the stunned guests, and said, "Well, who's up for cake?" And I meant it, because after everything, I wanted that cake. I earned that cake. But inside I was trembling. Because the truth is, this wasn't just a show. This was me reclaiming my life. And as powerful as I felt in that moment, I knew something else was coming. A consequence, a retaliation. Because men like Greg don't disappear quietly. They fight, they whimper, they scheme. And the next morning, I got the first sign. I woke up to over 50 missed calls from unknown numbers. Then a voicemail from Grace. "Aunt Pat, you're going to want to check the news." I turned on the television. There he was, Gregory Montgomery, sitting in a cheap folding chair outside of a courthouse, crying, on camera. "I'm being ruined by a vengeful woman who's just trying to take everything from me," he sobbed to the reporter. "She knew what this arrangement was. We were partners. Now she's making me look like a criminal." Then, the headline below him. "Local Charleston man claims he's being set up by Sugar Mama in shocking baby shower breakdown." My jaw clenched. Grace called again. "He just went viral, Aunt Pat, and he's spinning the story to look like you're an angry old fool." That's when it hit me. Greg wasn't just going to accept the fall, he was going to bury me in it. And my name, my dignity, my story, was about to be smeared across every corner of the internet. unless I did something first, something bigger, something he'd never see coming. Because Greg may have 3 mistresses and a victim act, but I had one truth, and I was about to take it public. The internet is a strange battlefield. It doesn't matter how old you are, what you've lived through, or how much truth you carry. If someone cries first on camera, suddenly, they're the victim. By noon that day, Greg's pitiful courthouse clip had already made it onto Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and a daytime gossip show called Carolina Chat. People were commenting things like, "She's 84 and he's 59. Of course she trapped him. This poor man just wanted a family. She sounds bitter and crazy." And that's when it hit me like a fresh slap to the face. I had just lived through one of the most humiliating, gut-wrenching moments of my life publicly. And now I was being painted as the villain. He wasn't just trying to clear his name, he was trying to erase mine. I stared at my phone, heart thumping in my chest. My finger hovered over the record button on my camera. And then I pressed it. The video wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't pretty either. I sat on my floral armchair, hair undone, no makeup, a mug of lukewarm tea beside me. I looked straight into the lens and said, "My name is Patricia Montgomery. I'm 84 years old. I've been a teacher, a mentor, a caregiver, and a woman who loved too hard. And yesterday I found out that my husband of 10 years, a man 25 years my junior, was cheating on me with not 1, not 2, but 3 women. One of them was my employee. One of them called me Mama Pat when she came to dinner. My voice cracked. I let it. I threw him a baby shower. I planned it for weeks. I baked, I decorated. I even had a special slideshow made. And right there, in front of friends and family, I revealed his mistresses, every last one. I looked down, took a breath. And now? He's crying on TV, telling the world I ruined his life. I leaned in. Let me tell you something. Women like me don't get heard very often. We're too old. Too emotional, too invisible, but not today. Today you're going to hear me. Then I uploaded it. Grace called me 5 minutes later. "You just dropped a nuclear bomb, Aunt Pat. It's everywhere." Within an hour, my video had been reposted by a feminist TikTok channel with 3 million followers. By the end of the day, it had 4.8 million views. The top comment read, "I don't care if she's 104. She's my new hero." Someone made a remix with dramatic music. Another person animated the baby shower reveal like it was a soap opera scene, and one user even edited a Ken Burns-style documentary of my slideshow with black and white stills and somber piano music. And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. But with light comes shadows, and Greg? Oh, he was furious. The next morning I got a knock at the door. A courier handed me a thick envelope. Inside, a letter from Greg's lawyer. Cease and desist from further public defamation, damages to reputation, emotional suffering, demand to remove all public content. I laughed. And then I handed it to Nora, my own lawyer, who said flatly, "He's bluffing, and he just gave us more material for the lawsuit." But it didn't stop there. He froze my access to one of our joint investment accounts. He sent his friends to comment hateful things on my video. One even said, "You should be in a retirement home, not playing detective." It stung, I won't lie. But what stung more? That night, my granddaughter Lacey came into my room with her laptop. "Nana," she said quietly, "you need to see this." She pulled up a new video Greg had posted. This time he wasn't crying. He was smiling. "This is Patricia's real motive," he said into the camera. "She wants to punish me for not loving her the way she wanted. She's weaponizing old age and sympathy for attention. What kind of mother plans a baby at her age anyway? I'm the one protecting this child, not her." And then he showed a document, a fake one, claiming I had been declared mentally unfit by a doctor. My mouth fell open. "Where did he get that?" I asked. Grace walked in just in time and said, "Photoshopped, but he's planting the idea. He's trying to claim you're unstable, so he can go for custody." I almost dropped my tea. Custody? I said. Of a baby he helped buy with my money? Grace nodded grimly. Yep, he's playing long-term now. Public sympathy, fake medical records, legal strategy. I sat in silence. And then I said something I never thought I would. We have to destroy him. The next morning I made 3 calls. The first, to a news anchor named Vanessa Thorne, who'd once interviewed me about my charity work for elderly women. The second, to my friend Darla, who had connections with a local podcast called Betrayal and Biscuits. And the third, to a private investigator, yes, a real one, tall fella named Reggie, wore a fedora and everything, said he specialised in cheating husbands and shady business. Perfect. I handed Reggie the file of Greg's burner phone, including a few voicemails he hadn't heard yet. One stood out, a message to Amanda. I'll make sure the baby's in my name only. Once the paperwork clears, I'll file her as mentally unstable and take everything. Then we can finally be free. Reggie listened twice. Then he grinned and said, We got him. 2 days later, the podcast episode aired. The baby shower bombshell, One Grandma's Revenge. It shot up the charts. Clips from the episode went viral, this time with proof. Reggie had tracked down receipts, medical logs, even witness statements from hotel staff who remembered Greg bringing different girls every few weeks. By the end of the week, Greg's sympathy pool had dried up faster than spilled wine on a hot Charleston sidewalk. Brands started pulling back. His law firm, where he did consulting on corporate ethics, ironically, removed his name from their client roster. And one of his mistresses? Amanda? She emailed me. I want nothing to do with him. If there's anything I can do to help you, I will. I didn't respond right away, but I saved the message, because something told me I'd need it. Then something happened that changed everything. A letter. No postmark, no sender name. Just one sentence, handwritten in shaky cursive. You think you know what Greg's hiding, but you don't. Look into the summer property. It was unsigned. My hands trembled as I held it. Summer property. Greg didn't own a summer property, at least not one I knew about. But if this was real, if he had something else buried out there, another life, another secret, then this wasn't over. Not even close. And whatever I'd uncovered so far might just be the tip of the iceberg. I stared at the letter in my lap like it was ticking. You think you know what Greg's hiding, but you don't. Look into the summer property. I turned it over. No name, no return address, just plain white paper, folded once. Who sent this? Why now? Greg and I never owned a second home together, not one in my name at least. We'd talked about getting a cabin near Asheville once, but he said we couldn't afford it. Said we needed to save for baby expenses. I should have known then. Men who lie about love often lie about land. I showed the note to Grace, who immediately got to work. Within 20 minutes, she'd found something. Got it, she said. There's a small property under his name. A little house off Route 12, about an hour out. He bought it 3 years ago, all cash. Never told you? I shook my head slowly. Not a word. My heart started racing. I want to go there, I said. Grace hesitated. Are you sure? What if it's dangerous? I'm not afraid of what's behind locked doors anymore, I whispered. I'm afraid of staying silent again. We packed light. I brought my phone, a flashlight, and one of my mother's old crosses, which I kept on a necklace ever since I buried her. Grace brought pepper spray and snacks, always the practical one. The road was quiet and winding. We reached the property around 4:30 in the afternoon. It was small, tucked between trees, barely visible from the road. A single white house with faded shutters and a screened porch that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. We parked on the gravel. I expected an empty place. I expected dust, spiders, maybe a forgotten mattress on the floor. What I didn't expect was a swing set. Brand new, in the backyard. Grace saw it too, and her hand froze on the car door. "Why would a man who doesn't have any kids set up a swing set?" she asked. I didn't answer. I was already out of the car. We walked slowly, cautiously to the back. There were toys, a small red tricycle, a yellow ball, a picnic blanket folded on the porch, and then we heard it, a giggle, a child's giggle. Grace looked at me. "Pat, what is going on?" I didn't speak. I couldn't. I knocked on the back door, 3 times. Silence. Then, footsteps. The door creaked open, and a woman, no more than 30, stood there holding the hand of a little girl. Blonde curls, big blue eyes. The woman's face fell when she saw me. "You're her," she whispered. The child looked up at me and smiled. "Hi." I blinked hard. She had Greg's eyes. "Come in," the woman said after a long, awkward silence. "You should probably come in." Grace gripped my arm tightly. "We don't have to." But I stepped inside. The house was modest, cozy, toys scattered in the corner, a playpen near the fireplace, sippy cups in the sink. "You've been living here?" I asked. The woman nodded slowly. "My name's Eliza," she said, "and this is Lily." She looked at me, then away. "I didn't know he had a wife until last week. He said he was divorced, said you were crazy and trying to ruin him. I didn't want to believe it, but then he stopped sending money, stopped answering calls." Eliza sighed and sat on the edge of the couch. "We've been here 3 years. He bought the house for us. He came by every couple of weekends, said he was trying to build a peaceful life away from the chaos." She looked me dead in the eye. I didn't know he had another child coming. Neither did I. But what froze me in place wasn't Eliza's words. It was Lily's laughter, pure, sweet, real. She ran up and hugged my leg like I was her grandma. And for a second, I forgot how much I hated him. Grace and I drove back in stunned silence. The pieces were falling fast now. Greg had been building 2 lives. One in Charleston with me, the life of image, wealth, future baby plans. The other in that house, hidden like a secret chapter, with Eliza and Lily. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry anymore. I just felt betrayed in ways I hadn't even known were possible. But I also felt something else. Purpose. I couldn't let him get away with this. Not for me. Not for Lily. That night I drafted a letter. It was long, handwritten, addressed directly to Greg. I didn't threaten. I didn't beg. I simply told the truth. "You didn't just cheat on me. You lied to a child. You made her a secret. You gave her swings and promises and disappeared. I'm 84. I've survived wars, widowhood, cancer, and I'll survive you too. But here's what you won't survive. The truth. I'm going public with everything. The mistresses, the fraud, the baby, Lily. I'm not doing this for revenge anymore. I'm doing it for every woman who's been told she's too old, too weak, too emotional. I'm doing it for the little girl who deserves a name that isn't hidden in a property file. You thought you'd bury me in shame, but I'm the one holding the shovel now." I sent it to him in the mail, with a printed photo of Lily smiling, and a copy of the deed transfer I'd found in my investigator's file, signed over to her. He thought he owned the land. He didn't know I'd bought the mortgage out from under him through one of my holding companies the moment I found out about it. That house? It belonged to Lily now. The next day Grace called me from the office. "You're going to want to sit down," she said. I was already in my chair. "Greg's been arrested," she said. "It's official." "For what?" "Tax fraud, financial concealment, and, thanks to Eliza's statement, child neglect." I closed my eyes, breathed. Stillness. Then, a knock at the front door. It was Eliza, with Lily holding a teddy bear. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her eyes welling. I opened the door wider. "You're home," I said. That night, Lily curled up on my lap with a blanket while Eliza helped Grace in the kitchen. The house smelled of cinnamon again. Laughter returned, soft and cautious, like an old friend who hadn't visited in a while. And me? I wasn't broken. I was becoming. But I knew it wasn't over yet, because Greg was in custody. And the media, they hadn't even heard about Lily. Not yet. The headline hit like a thunderclap. Charleston grandma uncovers secret family, cheating husband arrested for double life and tax fraud. By noon, it was on every news site in the southeast. Local anchors used phrases like elder justice, surrogate scandal, and double betrayal at 84. My phone buzzed non-stop. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. And me? I was still sitting at my dining table with Lily in my lap, stirring honey into her oatmeal. She didn't know anything about betrayal or courts or lawyers. She just wanted more strawberries. Grace called from the living room, phone pressed to her ear. "It's a national show this time, Nana. Real women, real stories. They want you to come on." I shook my head. "I'm not going on TV." "Too late," she said, mouth curling into a smirk. "I already said yes." I opened my mouth to object, but then paused. Maybe it was time. Time for my voice to be louder than Greg's tears. Time to stop hiding behind shame that was never mine to carry. Time to make sure the truth reached every corner he tried to stain. "All right," I said finally. "But I want full control. No glam squad. No edits. I speak as me." "Deal." 2 days later, I was in a small studio with soft lighting, my hand gripping the edge of a teacup as the camera rolled. The host, a kind-eyed woman named Celeste, leaned forward. "Miss Patricia, so many women, especially older women, are watching this right now, wondering how you stayed so strong. What do you say to them?" I looked into the camera. I saw my own reflection in the monitor, the grey curls, the lines around my mouth, the softness of age over sharp pain. Then I spoke. "I didn't stay strong every day," I said. "Some days I cried in my robe. Some days I broke plates. Some days I sat in silence wondering if I was foolish for falling in love again." I paused. But then I remembered. I didn't betray anyone. I gave love. I opened my heart. I trusted. And when someone takes advantage of that, it doesn't make you the fool. It makes them the coward. I reached for my necklace, my mother's cross. I speak today for every woman who was discarded like yesterday's furniture, for every woman who was told, "You're too old, too emotional, too late." You are not too late. Your story still matters. Celeste wiped a tear from her eye. And I knew. Greg couldn't control the narrative anymore. I owned it now. But the quiet didn't last. 3 days after the interview aired, 3.1 million views trending in 5 cities, I received a manila envelope at my door. From Greg's lawyer. Inside, a handwritten letter from Greg. "You won. Congratulations. The world sees you as some saintly old woman who took down the big bad wolf. But you don't know what you've started. You think this is over. I'll be out soon, and when I am, I'm taking back everything." Underneath the letter was a photo, a grainy black and white surveillance still, of me, leaving Eliza's summer property. It was time-stamped, it was recent, and it meant only one thing: someone was watching me. Still. I slammed the envelope on the table. Grace rushed in. "What is it?" I handed it to her without a word. Her face darkened. "He's threatening you, and he's got someone tailing you." I nodded slowly. "I need Reggie again," I said. "And this time, I want him to go all the way." Reggie met me at a diner that night. He ordered black coffee, no sugar. "Greg's desperate," he said. "His bail hearing's coming up. He's going to try and paint you as a manipulator, maybe even claim you orchestrated everything. You ready for that?" I met his eyes. "I've spent my whole life helping people, Reggie. Students, family, strangers. I've done everything right. But if you think I'm going to let a lying, cheating fraud of a man rewrite my legacy, you've got the wrong woman." He nodded. "I'm digging deeper. That house he bought. I think there's more." 2 days later, Reggie called me. "What I'm about to send you, you need to be sitting down." He sent a file. Inside? A second deed. Same town, a different property, purchased under an alias, Greg's alias. And the listed tenant? A woman named Vanessa, not the TV host, not one of the mistresses, not Eliza, another woman and a second child, born 5 years ago, a boy, named Jacob. The ground felt like it tilted beneath my feet. Greg hadn't just cheated. He had a second family before me, all while living in Charleston, marrying me, and pretending to build a future with my money. And now, he was planning to use my platform, my success, to flip the narrative, to make himself the victim again. I stared at the photo Reggie attached. Greg holding a toddler in front of a cabin, kissing Vanessa on the cheek. I printed it. I added it to my binder. Because now, I had everything. The next morning, I walked into Nora's office and placed the file on her desk. "This is it," I said. "This is how we end it." She opened it, eyes scanning the photos, the receipts, the fake names, the connections. She whistled low. "Patricia, you didn't just catch him. You exposed an entire spider web." I nodded. "We're filing for full financial restitution, ownership of all properties connected to his fraud, and a public court testimony." Nora grinned. "And we'll win." I leaned back, finally breathing, finally free. Or so I thought. Until the doorbell rang later that night, and standing there was Vanessa, trembling, eyes red, the little boy by her side, and the words that left her mouth nearly dropped me to the floor. "He's gone," she whispered. "Greg escaped police custody. He left us a note. He's coming for you." Greg escaped. That phrase echoed in my head like a church bell that wouldn't stop tolling. Vanessa stood in my doorway, her eyes glassy, her son Jacob clutching her hand like he'd sensed something wasn't right. He couldn't have been more than 5 years old, a shock of dark hair and big eyes that, God help me, looked exactly like Greg's. I ushered them in. Vanessa handed me the note Greg had left behind. "Vanessa, you never understood me. But she, Patricia, she destroyed me, took everything I built, and now I'm going to take back what's mine. All of it. She won't see me coming." It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise, and it chilled my 84-year-old bones straight to the marrow. I locked every door and window in the house that night. Grace insisted we stay at a hotel, but I refused. He already knows where I live. If he wants a final showdown, he can look me in the eyes when he tries. That wasn't pride. It was strategy. Because I wasn't going to cower, I was going to end this. We moved quickly the next morning. Grace coordinated with Nora to get an emergency restraining order filed and pushed to court under exigent circumstances. Reggie put a 24-hour surveillance car outside my house. Lily and Jacob stayed in the guest room, tucked safely between reinforced locks and security cameras. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a cup of hot coffee, trying to calm my nerves. Vanessa sat across from me, her hands trembling. "I didn't know about you," she said softly. "When we met, he told me he was divorced, said you were a bitter old lady who stole his inheritance." I scoffed. "Inheritance? He had $12.36 in his account when we met. He was 2 months behind on rent and sleeping in his office." She looked shocked. "He told me he built his business from scratch." I leaned in. "No, I built it. He just memorized the talking points." She started to cry. "I'm so sorry, Patricia. I was stupid." I reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "No, dear. You were lied to, just like the rest of us." That afternoon, Reggie came by with surveillance footage. Greg had been spotted in a black sedan 2 towns over. He was alone. He'd been seen buying prepaid phones, a duffel bag, and, most chillingly, a crowbar. He was preparing for something. I could feel it in my gut. He wasn't just going to run. He was going to confront. By evening, the media got hold of the story. Escape vengeance. Husband who defrauded elderly wife on the run after baby shower scandal. The comments exploded. People were angry, protective, curious, but a few were disturbing. She brought it on herself. Should have known better than to trust a younger man. I bet this whole thing was just a setup for views. I turned the screen off. Sometimes the worst wounds are the ones made by strangers. But I had bigger concerns. Because at 2:37 a.m, the motion sensor on my front gate tripped. And when I looked at the monitor, it was him. Greg. I didn't panic. I called Reggie, then the police. I woke Grace, moved the kids into the safest room. Vanessa stood at the top of the stairs holding a baseball bat. Bless her brave little heart. I opened the security app on my phone and watched him. Greg didn't knock. He just stood there, staring. Then he screamed, "Patricia!" I jumped. The kids began to cry. "You ruined me! You think you're so righteous? You think people care about you because you're old and fragile? You're nothing without me!" He pulled out the crowbar and swung it at the gate. Once. Twice. Crack! The wooden slats splintered. The front gate burst open. The floodlights lit up the entire lawn. Reggie's car skidded into the driveway and a patrol cruiser followed seconds later. Greg turned, saw them, and ran for the back. Too late. 3 officers tackled him before he made it to the garden. He kicked, screamed, cursed me by name. But when they dragged him back to the front yard in cuffs, he locked eyes with me through the window. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You think the world loves you? They'll turn on you, Patricia. You're just a fad, a crazy old widow with a grudge." I opened the door, stepped out onto the porch, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, calm and clear, "I'm not a widow, Greg. You're still breathing, but not for long if you don't shut that mouth." He lunged toward me, but the officers shoved him back. "Take him," I said softly, "and this time, make it stick." It was over. Really over. Greg was taken back into custody, this time with added charges, breaking and entering, attempted assault and child endangerment. His bail was denied. His assets were frozen. And the next morning? My inbox exploded. "Would you consider writing a book? We'd love to turn your story into a documentary. We want to feature you on a panel about women reclaiming power." But the message that touched me the most came from a woman named Margaret in Idaho. She wrote, "I'm 76. My husband cheated on me for 20 years and made me feel worthless. Watching your story unfold gave me courage I didn't think I had left. Thank you. I finally packed my bags." That's when I cried. Not for Greg. Not for what I lost. But for the millions of women like me who'd been taught to stay quiet, and who, for once, finally saw someone refuse. That evening, I sat on the porch swing with Lily on one side, Jacob on the other. They giggled as they shared a bowl of vanilla ice cream. Vanessa came out with a blanket and draped it over my shoulders. "You're like a lighthouse," she said. "We were all lost. And then we found you." I smiled. But in the back of my mind, I knew there was one final thing to do. The courtroom. The testimony. The closure. Because the story wasn't just about what Greg did. It was about what I would say next. To the world. The courtroom was cold. Not physically. No, the air conditioner was just fine. But emotionally. You could feel it. The hush of strangers. The buzz of reporters just outside. The stiff silence of a place where truth and lies collided daily, both trying to outpace each other. And me? I was sitting in the front row, wearing a soft blue blazer and my mother's pearl earrings. My cane rested beside me. Grace was on one side, Vanessa and the kids just behind me. Reggie sat a few rows back, arms crossed, eyes sharp. This was it. Greg's hearing. The moment the world would hear the full truth. Not from news clips, not from viral videos, from me. Greg looked haggard, unshaven, wrinkled suit, no designer watch, no swagger. He looked small. But when our eyes met, I saw it. That glint of defiance, the same one he had when he stormed my baby shower, the same one he had when he threatened me. He thought he could still manipulate the world. Until the judge said, "We'll now hear from the primary plaintiff, Mrs. Patricia Montgomery." I rose slowly. My joints protested, but I stood tall. I made my way to the witness box, took the oath, sat down, and then I began. I am 84 years old. I've lived through wars, widowed young, survived breast cancer, and raised 2 generations of children. I fell in love again in my late 70s. I believed in hope, in starting over. I turned slightly to face Greg. And I married a man who told me I made him feel seen. I believed that, until I learned he was seeing everyone else too. Laughter rippled through the room. The judge banged the gavel once, lightly. I continued. I planned a baby shower for a child I was bringing into this world, not through my body, but through love, through legacy, through surrogacy. And during that time, my husband, my partner, was spending my money on 3 different women. He built a secret life in a secret house with a child I never knew existed. I paused. He then fabricated medical records to paint me as mentally unfit. He tried to take the baby. He tried to take my name. But what he didn't count on was that women like me don't fade quietly. We rise. The room was silent. Even Greg looked rattled. I am not here today because I want revenge. I am here because I want protection, for my finances, my story, and my grandchildren, both by blood and by choice. The judge leaned forward. Anything else, Mrs. Montgomery? I locked eyes with her. Yes. I want it on public record that age is not weakness. Age is wisdom. It is power. And when women like me are pushed into corners, we don't crumble. We plan. She nodded. I stepped down. Greg's lawyer didn't even look at me. The ruling came down an hour later. All properties and accounts fraudulently used or acquired by Mr. Gregory Montgomery are hereby forfeited. Sole parental responsibility of the unborn child is granted to Mrs. Patricia Montgomery. A permanent protective order is issued. Furthermore, Mr. Montgomery will remain in custody pending sentencing on multiple fraud-related charges. The gavel slammed. It was done. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. I felt Grace's hand on my shoulder. Vanessa was crying. But me? I stood there quietly, breathing, free, finally. Later that evening, back home, we opened the windows. Let the breeze in. Jacob and Lily were drawing with chalk on the porch steps. Vanessa laughed in the kitchen. Grace poured us both a glass of wine. The family I hadn't planned for, the future I never saw coming. And then I got a letter in the mail. One more letter, this one from Greg, written from jail. You beat me, fine, but you'll die alone with a fake baby and a broken heart. No one will remember you, Patricia. I folded the letter, lit a match, and watched it curl to ash in the sink. Because he was wrong. I wasn't alone. I wasn't broken. And the baby was on the way. The hospital room was still and dimly lit, the only sound a steady monitor beep and the hum of anticipation. I stood there with Grace and Vanessa, our hands clasped, eyes fixed on the hallway door where a nurse would soon walk in and tell me if the child I'd been dreaming about, the baby born from betrayal, truth and quiet strength, had finally arrived. The surrogate had gone into labour hours earlier. I had waited my whole life to become a mother again, and now, at 84, I was about to raise a child not born from my body, but from the ashes of everything Greg tried to burn down. I can't believe this moment is here, Grace whispered. Neither could I. 2 hours later, a nurse walked in holding a tiny swaddled baby, pink-cheeked and blinking under the soft lights. Congratulations, Miss Montgomery, she said gently. She's perfect. A girl. A little girl. I reached out with trembling arms, and the moment that child rested against my chest, something in me clicked. A door long shut opened. I didn't just feel love. I felt rebirth, not hers, mine. Back home, the house transformed. What was once a quiet home for one now rang with lullabies and laughter. Lily and Jacob became eager helpers, bringing diapers and singing songs to their new baby sister. Vanessa helped with feedings, Grace managed our schedules, and I became Nana Mama. We named her Hope, because that's what she was. A second chance, a new beginning. But of course Greg wasn't done. Not entirely. 3 weeks after Hope came home, I received word from Nora. "Greg's filed a final appeal," she said grimly. "He's trying to overturn the ruling, citing emotional manipulation and age discrimination." I sighed. "He just doesn't know when to stop, does he?" She leaned forward. "But this time, I want you to speak again. Not in court, to the world. Let them hear what it means to choose strength over silence. One last time." I hesitated, but then I said, "Let's do it." The following week, I recorded my final video. I sat in the nursery with baby Hope in my arms, soft lullaby music playing in the background, and I spoke. You've heard my story, you've seen the headlines, and you may have even wondered, why is this old woman still talking? I looked into the camera, voice calm but steady. Because talking is how we survive. It's how we tell other women, you're not crazy, you're not alone, you're not done. I paused to kiss Hope's forehead. Greg thought he could take everything. My money, my voice, my motherhood. He didn't take a thing. He only reminded me who I was, and who I still am. And if you're out there, at 40, 60 or 84, thinking it's too late to reclaim your life, let me tell you something. You're just getting started. I ended with a whisper. You are not disposable. You are the damn foundation. Then I uploaded it. By morning, the video had 12 million views. Women from all over the world flooded my inbox with stories of escape, resilience, and rediscovery. And then came the final blow. Reggie called me. His appeal was denied, he said. Unanimously. He's officially lost everything. I stepped outside with Hope in my arms, the sun rising over Charleston like the first morning of spring. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because Greg's legacy was ashes. But mine had just begun. But there was still one final thing I needed to do. A letter. To him. Not to curse him. Not to gloat. But to close the door. Forever. Greg, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. You tried to erase me. But I wrote myself back into the world louder than ever. And the baby girl you tried to steal? She sleeps in a home full of love, a home built by a woman you underestimated. I am not your victim. I am your consequence. Goodbye. I never signed it, just left it blank. Because sometimes, silence is the only signature you need. It was a warm Saturday morning when I hosted what the neighbours later called the redemption picnic. No invitation was printed, but word spread fast. Old friends, students I hadn't seen in 30 years, the new mothers I'd met in support groups, the women who'd inboxed me saying I gave them courage. They came in waves. By noon, my backyard was filled with folding chairs, laughter, and the smell of sweet tea and peach cobbler. A soft breeze moved through the trees like music. And in the middle of it all sat Hope, wrapped in a yellow bonnet, asleep in her cradle beneath the magnolia tree. Lily danced barefoot through the grass. Jacob chased bubbles. Grace adjusted her sunglasses and said to me, "You do realise this isn't just a celebration. This is a movement." I smiled but said nothing. Not because I was being humble, but because, deep down, I finally understood. They didn't just come to celebrate a win in court. They came to celebrate a woman who didn't give up. After the food, they asked me to speak. I stood under a small white tent, microphone in hand, looking out at a crowd that spanned 8 decades of life, from toddlers to women in wheelchairs. I cleared my throat. I was told I should be quiet at this age, I began. That I should shrink, disappear. Make room for the young and let go of the past. The wind picked up gently, lifting the edge of my scarf. But here's what I've learned. Age doesn't erase worth. It refines it. I looked over at Hope. She may not understand what she was born into, but she'll grow up knowing this, that truth matters, that no woman is too old to fight for her voice. That betrayal doesn't end you. It begins something else. Someone clapped, then another, then all. And then came a voice from the back. Tell them how he ended. Laughter followed, but I lifted the mic again and nodded. You want the ending? Fine. Here's the ending. He's behind bars. No money, no house, no name left to hide behind. The world no longer listens to his sob stories. I paused. And me? I gestured around the yard. I've got everything he tried to steal. And more. Cheers erupted. Hope stirred in her cradle and yawned, a sound so soft and perfect it nearly broke me in half. That night, after the last slice of cake was served and the chairs were folded, I sat alone on the porch with my journal. I hadn't written in months. I opened to a fresh page and scribbled, Dear Greg, you once said I'd die old and bitter. You were half right. I'm old, but I am gloriously unbitter. You tried to shrink me. I expanded. You tried to bury me. I grew roots. You tried to steal my future, but I became someone else's instead. Then I put the pen down and just listened. To the wind, to Lily's soft sleep talk, to Vanessa humming a lullaby, to the quiet beat of Hope's breath on the baby monitor beside me. Life had changed. I had changed. Weeks passed. Then months. Greg's sentencing came and went. 14 years without parole, plus restitution to me, Vanessa, and Eliza. He didn't even speak during sentencing. No apology. No remorse. But it didn't matter, because we were already gone, already beyond him. And here's the part they never show you in the headlines. Healing doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like Tuesday mornings where nobody yells. It looks like giggles during bath time and warm bottles at 2 a.m. It looks like putting on earrings for no reason. It looks like finding old letters and laughing instead of crying. It looks like peace. And for the first time in my life, I have it. Hope turned one last month. She took her first steps right in the middle of the living room, arms stretched like she was walking toward freedom. And in a way, she was. I scooped her up and whispered, You come from a long line of women who don't break. We bend, we survive, we tell our stories, and we start over. If you're still listening to this story, bless you. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe they said you were too old, too fragile, too emotional. Let me tell you this. You are not disposable. You are not too late. And you are not alone. Because somewhere, an old woman in Charleston turned a baby shower into a courtroom, a courthouse into a legacy, and a lie into loud, unstoppable truth. And if I did it at 84, so can you. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that dignity can be reclaimed, that quiet power is still power, then like, comment, and subscribe, because your story matters, and your next chapter might just be your best.